Chapter 9 Lone Wolf Alpha Squad Copy Over by James Rink. Chapter 9, page 151. He's psychosomatic. Wednesday, May 5, 2005. 6 weeks after Nate's disappearance, I did my best to sort out what happened. Between the barrage of needle marks, missing time, dizzy spells, and a spontaneous desire to binge on alcohol, which seems to be connected to alcohol usage phone surveys I was getting from the National Institutes of Health. I ultimately ended up in the psych ward. I was supposed to graduate from college during the weeks I was locked away. In the weeks I was locked away, one of my friends suggested that if I drank a lot of alcohol, it would help unlock my memories. I later realized this man was placed into my life as a handler. At the same time, the National Institutes of Health seemed extremely interested in my alcohol consumption and drinking habits. They would ask me very personal questions such as, how many friends do I have? What is my relationship with my family? And was I suffering from depression? I had a hunch the government was probably making a psychological profile, so I answered all the questions the opposite of what I normally would. Eventually, I got bored and began questioning the surveyor, asking why the National Institutes of Health were suppressing the cures for cancer. The surveyor laughed at that one and never answered. But my mom suspected these people were not who they claimed to be and ordered me to stop. After doing only a small portion of the survey, I politely ended the call. But over the next couple of weeks, they kept calling me back. Looking back at this, I wonder if they were trying to program me with some kind of subliminal triggers to start drinking heavily. My friend who doubled as my handler did trigger me to start drinking heavily. He would give me codes that would make me dizzy, such as 079617906 He insisted my parents were the ones causing my needle marks and drugging me with poison and instructed me to kill them. Since I don't believe in violence, he suggested that I should start binge drinking and said alcohol would neutralize the toxins injected into me. Around this time, my roommate comes in the room and sees me in a totally broken down state. The code he triggered me with seemed to activate some kind of dizzy spell and caused a racing heartbeat. At this point, I am hysterical and crying and gulping all these cans of beer and saying, the government is trying to poison me. I don't want to die. My said, that's ridiculous. I think you're just stressed out from your exams and the abuse your parents put you through. He tries to explain how the stress from my upcoming college graduation and abusive parents was causing me to have an emotional breakdown. I ask him how that explains away my needle marks, Nathan's disappearance, and visits from otherworldly beings. He was never able to give me a reasonable answer. The next morning, like I always did, I made my daily fruit smoothie for breakfast, and my handler informs me that my father broke into my apartment the night before and put poison in my food. As soon as he said that, my legs became numb and I collapsed on the floor from dizziness. to call poison control. I said, I can't do that. If I tell someone is poisoning me, they will think I'm crazy. He replied, then make something up. You must talk or you'll die. I called the poison control center and told them I may have had possible food poisoning and I'd like to bring in a sample to get tested. The operator the operator said that if I was poisoned that I needed to call 911, but I told them I only want to get my food tested. They said they couldn't help me, so I dialed 911 and they told me they would send an ambulance. The ambulance rushed me off to the hospital. I thought all this would clear up when the test came back. At the very least, I would know what caused the symptoms I was having. When I was at the hospital, they put me in the evaluation room and ignored me for 8 hours. I requested no visitors because at that point I didn't know who to trust. I kept waiting and waiting for the test results. While waiting, one of my family members shows up. I told her I really didn't want to talk right now. She asked why. I said, my father is trying to poison me. What do you know about that? She said, no, that's ridiculous. After a few minutes of nervous silence, she said, James, the doctors found no food poisoning. We are going to have you hospitalized, and she left. A few hours later, my parents visited me. At this point, I was exhausted and just wanted to go home and sort out any poison testing later on. My dad sat silently next to me. My mother knew something wasn't right. She thought the government fucked with my head because of my involvement with Nate. She said, James, you've got to get out of here. You know, these doctors are working for the government. I want you to go out there, apologize, and tell them that you were drinking too much. Tell them all of this is just an allergic reaction and you would like to just go home now. I was just about to do this, but I was starving. I hadn't had anything to eat in 14 hours, so my parents went to the cafeteria to grab me a bite to eat since I wasn't allowed to go by myself. After eating half the meal, my legs and arms became paralyzed yet again, but this time it was worse. I couldn't move at all, and I had a raging headache. All I could do was lie on a gurney, paralyzed, and watch helplessly as doctors walked by and ignored me while parents stared. Was I programmed to think I was poisoned, or did my dad really slip something into my food? I have no idea. I don't feel like my parents would hurt me like that, so if they did do it, they would probably have been in an altar themselves. After I could regain my balance a bit, I confronted the nurse again and told her that my parents were trying to kill me. The nurse tried to calm me down and said a doctor would be available shortly for an evaluation, but no doctor arrived. 18 hours into the ordeal, I was brought before a social worker asking me to sign papers to be voluntarily hospitalized. Since I felt like I had nowhere else to go, I signed them. And they trucked me to a separate facility where I remained for nearly 4 weeks. So, this is how I found myself at the psych ward. No one is answering my questions, and up to that point, no one showed me any of my poison test results or what I was being diagnosed with. When I finally met with my first doctor, I expressed frustration at how I was paying $1,000 a day and still had not been permitted to see my own test results or diagnostic code. The doctor's reaction was aloof. He talked in front of me as if I was catatonic and didn't even exist. He told me how I needed to cooperate and let them do more tests. Failed to pick up paper. What? Never mind. I'm lost. Was I programmed to think I was poisoned? Or did my dad really slip something into my food? I have no idea. I don't feel like my parents would hurt me like that, so if they did do it, they would probably have been in an altar themselves. After I could regain my balance a bit, I confronted the nurse again and told her that my parents were trying to kill me. The nurse tried to calm me down and said a doctor would be available shortly for an evaluation, but no doctor arrived. 18 hours into the ordeal, I was brought before a social worker asking me to sign papers to be voluntarily hospitalized. Since I felt like I had nowhere else to go, I signed them, and they trucked me to a separate facility where I remained for nearly 4 weeks. So, this is how I found myself at the psych ward. No one is answering my questions, and up to that point, no one showed me any of my poison test results or what I had been was being diagnosed with. I thought I read that. When I finally met with my first doctor, I expressed frustration at how I was paying $1,000 a day. And so, just stop. Just stop. Stop. Please stop. Stop. Too many distractions. Oh my god, this is so fucking thing. Just can't see anything. What? Was I programmed to think I was poisoned, or did my dad really slip something into my food? I have no idea. I don't feel like my parents would hurt me like that, so if they did do it, they would probably have been in an altar themselves. Skipping forward. I told him that I thought I might be a victim of government mind control. He said, "Your story is too bizarre to be believable." So I asked him to hypnotize me so we could find out what may be going on. But he never agreed to try it out. Then they started drugging me. I complained to the nurses about my sensitivity towards medication. But my complaints only served the opposite effect. They assumed I was suffering from delusions and needed a higher dosage. The more I protested, the higher my dosage, until my will to fight was gone. Some of these meds would cause me to be drowsy all day. You know that feeling you get when you're up really late and just want to collapse in your bed. Now try feeling like that the whole day. And then imagine being in this state and a nurse threatening to lock you out of your bedroom unless you sit through a seminar on how medication is good for you while you are going in and out of consciousness. During these group therapy sessions, I had to listen to lectures on the right meds that work for you. When it became my turn to talk about my feelings, I asked the nurse, why is there no education on diet, vitamins, exercise, biofeedback, hypnosis, or homeopathy? In order to get well, one must address these multifaceted aspects of our health. Medications do not fix the problem, they only cover up the underlying chemical imbalances. The nurse stumbled on a few words, but eventually agreed with me that there should be more focus on natural methods. She told me, we only prescribe medications here. Going back to the first night, I was forced into taking my prescribed medication. I received an unmarked pill. I was supposed to take 200 milligrams of Seroquel. These pills are clearly stamped with words Seroquel 200 milligrams on them. But this unmarked pill gave me the same paralyzing symptoms I had prior to calling an ambulance. Whatever was in this pill was 10 times worse. I had paralysis, racing heartbeat, and this time I had shooting pain all over my body, which lasted all night. I told the orderlies something wasn't right with the pill. I just took and needed someone to check on me. They told me that someone will be with me shortly and to go back to my room. I wanted all I waited all night and no one came. I spent much of that night reciting Saint Germain's Violent Flame, which helps to cleanse the auric field of negative energy. And I am glad too because it helped me feel so much better throughout my stay. The next day, I told the doctor what happened. He leaned towards the nurse and said, he's psychosomatic, which means I made it all up in my head. Perhaps this was a placebo, but if this is the case, why that reaction? A few years later, I went through my medical file and was reading the comments on how if my condition did not improve, I would have to be permanently institutionalized. The next night, I was given a stamped pill marked 200 milligrams of Seroquel, which resulted in a typical normal response to an antipsychotic medication. The strange dizzy symptoms also occurred in another incident. This time they handed me an alleged multivitamin. At that point, I realized something bizarre was going on. Either the pills I was being given were being intentionally laced with drugs, or a remote influencer was fucking with my head, or maybe some kind of chip or microwave weapon was being used against me. I don't know. But from then on, I decided it was best to keep the symptoms I was feeling to myself. So I cooperated. How do you do this sitting down thing? How do you sit? How do you sit? How do you sit? Lighting, lighting 101. Reading's hard. I'm very scatterbrained. I decided it was best to keep the symptoms I was feeling to myself. So I cooperated. I told the doctors the meds were making me feel so much better now. I was ready to go home and keep taking my meds while continuing my therapy. But before I would be discharged, I had to confront my family. During this meeting, I asked my father if he noticed anything unusual about me as a child, anything unusual about me as a child. and I got an interesting response. He said, he said, he said, when you were 8, I came home from work and found you shaking in the bed and you were talking like a different person. I got my Bible out and did an exorcism. I have no memories of any of this, and my father never once told me he'd done an exorcism on me before. The only way an 8-year-old boy would become possessed that I know of is if they were exposed to Satanism. Since my father would not discuss this matter any further, I can only make assumptions. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe, please. Yeah. That you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. It's called the pursuit of happiness. I can't ever find where I leave. Where I leave. Where I leave, I can't find. I can't also never see. And I don't want to turn on all these lights like Klieg lights, like I'm not at, Yankee Stadium, all right? I just wish I had like a light bulb eyes. And no, I don't want to. I like a book now. He was performing an exorcism. I have no memories of any of this, and my father never once told me he'd done an exorcism on me before. The only way an 8-year-old boy would become possessed that I know of is if they were exposed to Satanism. Since my father would not discuss this matter any further, I can only make assumptions. Was this because of my painful erections and why I have no memories of my life from the age of 6 to 8? Some ritual performed on me as a child? A clue about this came from a psychic medium. She was able to help me understand why so many other psychics kept seeing the name David around me, and why, as a teenager, would often write poems wishing I was David. I don't have any recall about this, nor can I confirm its validity, but I want to share it anyway. This is what I was told. This is what I was told. David molested you as a child and died soon after. When he was 14 years old and you were 8, your parents hired him to babysit and act as an older playmate, but he was into Satanism. Your parents knew about, but didn't take it very seriously. You would often tell David, I wish I could be like you. David was sexually abused and acted it out on you. When your dad caught him molesting you, instead of trying to get you the therapy that you needed, he told you to forget about it. And that's probably why you have forgotten that period of your childhood. I also noticed after that incident, you started to become withdrawn as a child and stopped making friends. Your mother knew what was going on, but didn't bother to help you either. Otherwise, she would have to admit she used bad judgment, since she is the one who hired him. After David died, he felt so guilty about what he'd done that he's been hanging out in astral all these years, trying to find a way to apologize to you. Curious to see what my parents' reaction would be to this information, I confronted them. They laughed it off, saying it was ridiculous, and denied they ever knew a David. Since I am unable to remember what happened to me during that time in my life, there's little else I can say. Perhaps this was part of my lab programming. I don't know. It wasn't until I was discharged from the hospital that I was allowed to review my medical records. I was diagnosed with psychosis, NOS, not otherwise specified. According to DSM 4, psychosis occurs when a person loses touch with reality. Oh, the light is so good. It is either caused by genetic factors, stress, chemical imbalances, and drug use. But one could easily add mind control to that list. Symptoms are characterized by problems in thinking, delusions, hallucinations, and changed feelings and behaviors. They were unable to find any poison. However, my blood contained high levels of potassium. They were unable to ascertain as to why that was the case. I often wondered about this. Potassium is known to cause irregular heartbeat and even heart attack if given in large doses. So perhaps this is what caused the racing heartbeat. Another clue was sent to me by another MyLab victim. I thought it's worth mentioning, though I cannot verify its accuracy. You are a DSM code extraterrestrial hybrid used for outer space operations. They are injecting us with high doses of potassium and calcium as beta channel blockers and other chemicals to keep us on peak level. This is somehow connected to Operation Rebirth 163 64, which involves correcting our vision, mind, immune system, durability, gene mutation, etc. Potassium is used in higher doses to activate carbon. It is a natural pain desensitizer and is used for radiation protection, such as cosmic radiation and atomic nuclear testing radiation. About a month later, the hospital finally sent me home with $25,000 worth of doctor bills and a bottle of meds, which promptly went in the dumpster. Promptly went into the dumpster. I am proud to report that I have been med free ever since. When I came home, I confronted my friend who doubled as a handler. James, why did you lie to me about all this? Friend, yes, I did. I don't have to live with it. You're chicken shit. You believe people online. James, how come I got sick after you said I was being poisoned? You must have eaten something. It's not my fault. You're stupid. How am I getting needle marks and scratches? They're stretch marks. All weightlifters get them. The only problem with this statement is that stretch marks don't cause you to develop lumps that look like implants and scoop marks of missing flesh. I cut my ties to that jerk and removed him from my life. I'll just let karma bite him back. When I look back, I feel there is a strong possibility that this individual was probably under mind control programming himself. His actors are very very his actions are very typical of a gamma lying program. His family is Illuminati and owns a large chain of hotels, which most of you would recognize. But I moved on. Financially, the medical expenses ruined me for many years. My family did not want to hear any more crazy talk involving Nathan, aliens, neo marks, or molestation by David. To be continued, chapter 10, next episode. This has been a reading of Lone Wolf, Alpha Squad, copy over. Chapter 9, he's psychosomatic. Chapter 10, next episode. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Is it done?